That alone, verse number 63. Apart from remaining in knowledge without becoming other than it, and knowing this knowledge here, struggling in frustration, one does not know. Who sees the supreme secret of the wise man? Commentary. For most people, the concept of a spiritual life means going away from the activities in which they are normally engaged, to live an altogether different kind of life. Fully dedicated spiritual seekers like Catholic monks, Buddhist bhikkhus, or Hindu sannyasis seem to live a life pattern which is very different from the rest of us. They adopt a special lifestyle, often with rigorous discipline involved. Their behavioral patterns are not like those of others. When we see all these things, we tend to think that spiritual life means doing certain things and then achieving a result. The here and now aspect of life is considered to be not worthwhile. We think this time I have now is only for my training, so that someday I will become qualified to gain the great realization. With these hopes, people enter spiritual pursuits. They believe they will be getting something down the road or just around the corner, and their spiritual preceptors encourage such beliefs. A whole lifetime passes like that. The great excitement which these people are expecting never comes to pass. Or if something happens which is very exciting, they think, oh, that must be the realization I was looking for. But like any other fantasy, it fades out. When it is gone, they are no better off than they were before. Yet people are struggling. Those who make spiritual realization a commercial proposition only add to the struggle, since they gain from convincing their students that their efforts will bring results. We hear so many stories of great spiritual personalities like the Buddha, Christ, and others. A story is only exciting if there is something spectacular in it. There has to be a very tragic situation or some other dramatic tension. Then suddenly something tremendous resolves the situation, a big light or whatever. If these things didn't happen, it wouldn't be a very good story. But you cannot live someone else's story as your life. Your life is all you have, and it's a very simple thing. Whatever realization you are to get, you have to get in this life. It must infuse the very pattern in which you are living. There is no sense in pretending to be a Ramana Maharishi or a Sri Ramakrishna. You can't make a Kali temple here in America and sit before it, undergoing all the devotional rites Ramakrishna did in anticipation that one day, suddenly, Kali will jump out of the stone image and give you the big hit on your head. No such thing is going to happen. But still we fantasize. Let's examine the states of consciousness from the standpoint of how much control we have over them to bring about a desired result. The highest state, one we have only heard about, is called samadhi. Samadhi is not a state like eating chocolate cake. There are no sensations, there are no ideations. In samadhi, there is no modification of the mind. If there is no modification of mind, there is no question of knowing or not knowing. Is it possible to direct your mind in any way when there is no modification at all? Certainly not. It is just a state of being. There is no knower there, nor is there any knowing. What advice could be given if there is only a state of beingness? There is no scope for you to do anything, for the simple reason that you are not really there as an agent. If you were there, you could do something, of course. The next deepest state is deep sleep. Nobody can be instructed how to have a deep sleep or how to cognize the experience of deep sleep. It happens when there is no cognition. Here also effort is irrelevant. At least in two states, absorption and deep sleep, you are totally incapable of doing anything on your own. They are neither good nor bad. When they come, and you just live them. The dream state is very fascinating because now there is a cognizer. You can see what is going on. Many forms come, colorful, bold, or frightening. But still you do not program your dreams. You are only permitted to lie on your bed and witness all those things passing before you. Good or bad, there they are. That is all. You cannot do the least bit about it. Of course, you can get into a kind of self-criticism inside the dream, but the dream tricks you by supplying its own kind of reasoning. If you start examining your dream while you are dreaming, it knows just how to fool you. I try all the time, but I have never succeeded in maintaining a coherent logic in the dream state. I make all sorts of experiments to establish that it is a dream, but it defies my efforts and convinces me that it is not. Then I wake to find that it was a dream after all. So it seems that no discipline is possible in the dream state. What is left to us as the field for our endeavor is only the transactions of the wakeful consciousness. Here things are very definite. If I want to read, I read. If I decide not to speak, I can remain silent. If I want to become self-critical or critical of others, I can do that. If I just want to show my interest in you, I can show interest. If I want to withdraw, I just do it. This is a most convenient state of consciousness, where you can program and do as you like. In this world where you have that kind of freedom, what kind of knowledge do you have? You have sensations of the body, heat and cold, physical comfort and all that. This is called Jiva Jnanam, the knowledge of our biologic functions. Then you have knowledge which arises out of the sense contact. I see my spectacles sitting there. I see my wrap. It is a good wrap. The sensory images that one can experience are called Indriya Jnana, knowledge of the senses. So we have a biologic knowledge and a sensory knowledge. Then we can think, I'm sure that the glasses sitting here are my spectacles and not my friend's. His are sitting on his nose. This is an exact knowledge, Yathartha Jnana. The Yathartha or actual knowledge I have of my wrap is that it is a wrap and it gives me comfort. The difference between the transactional and the dream is that the dream is fiction and transactions are factual. The world of transactions has many factual entities in it. One entity is different from another because of its unique name, form, properties, meaning and significance. If this experience is factual, why don't you call it your realization? Because you have heard that in the realized state, everything is one, and here you see everything as many. You have heard that truth is always the same, that it doesn't change. You have heard that in it there is no before and after, while here in the wakeful, transactional state, things appear, are experienced, and then pass away. Thus there is a past, a present, and a future. There is a process of becoming. Again, it is not one but many. There is a knower and knowledge. How can all this be the absolute? It cannot. There should not be any plurality in the absolute. So then, where should you look for the absolute? That's what you have to find out. Now take this cloth I am wearing. Without pulling away the threads and making it useless, just by looking at it and knowing it, I can easily see it is made of wool. I can call it a wrap and use it as a wrap, but all the same, it is just a cloth of wool. The wool, which was shorn from a sheep, is a biochemical substance that came from the sheep's body. On further analysis, the wool is made of chemical compounds. The chemical compounds themselves are made up of atoms, which themselves are forms of primal energy, presented as particles and waves. I have not done anything to my wrap, but now I have a knowledge that reduces my wrap, or my body, or you, or anything here, to one fundamental knowledge, that this has all evolved out of the same primal energy. This primal energy is one, changeless, of all time. So now I am seeing the changeless in the changing, the absolute in the relative, the beginningless and endless in what is transient. This is the great possibility of the wakeful. You have heard the absolute is blissful, but you don't know what that means. It is delightful to see you. I am happy when I look at you. I am also happy when I have a cup of some good drink or delicious food. It's a great joy to see the sunrise, to look at a flower, to read or write a poem, to listen to an interesting talk. In all these things we experience happiness. They are all the kind of happiness which comes from a particular subject or enjoying an object of interest. But this enjoyment of an object of interest is possible only if your knowledge can link together an existential factor and a value factor. There is just one knowledge, and in that knowledge we have the assurance that at this moment this exists. We should also have the assurance that this is very delightful. It is the quality of our knowledge that it has an existential verity and at the same time is happiness through and through. The specific occasion that makes it a happy thing, such as good food, the touch of a dear friend, the word of someone loved, or the subtle nuances of music or poetry, can come only here and now in our present actual life. So if you want to look for the absolute, this is the right place to do it, where you and I sit together and have a happy time. It is right in that happiness that you see the happiness which is called the absolute. It is a very simple thing. It is not some blinding light which is going to knock you down. It is the happiness of right now. Whether your joy is that of a yogi, one conjoined with the absolute, or a bhogi, one conjoined to the light of the senses, you do not have any separate or different kind of experience from this here. You should see the blissful beatitude of the absolute in sensual joy, and the joy of the senses in the absolute. To the wise, the eternal present is this here and now. What prevails in the state of supreme absorption, in the quietude of deep sleep, in the phantom shows of the dream, and in actuality, are all modulations of total knowledge. And never do you become so clearly aware of that knowledge as in the transactional, because here you can examine things and look for their deeper dimensions and significance. It is here you can reflect. A thing sits solidly here before you. It is gross, concrete, but you can convert it into just your knowledge, because only your knowledge is there for sure. Then the concrete thing becomes very subtle. It is identified with your own consciousness, is part and parcel of your awareness. It is up to you to make your consciousness bright or dull. If you decide, oh, this is the time to mourn, to sit and become boorish, you can. Or you can realize it's nonsense, just nonsense, to get into depressions. Instead, you could think, myself is a treasure, and each passing moment is to be enriched with the treasure of my own self. Every possible relationship I may get into here, with the things that are presented to me in the wakeful, I will also enrich. If the Absolute is all joy, all bliss, there is no reason why this moment also should not be like that. However, there is one impediment, something called Vipati Vijnana, seeing everything as its opposite. The self is seen as the non-self, and the non-self is seen as the self. It is not just because you are in the wakeful, and the world is presented there, and you can do anything that it becomes a happy occasion. No, from your side you have to do one thing. Certain kinds of understanding are to be reversed. For instance, what you experience as concrete you have to reverse and see how it is not concrete. It is only your idea of concreteness that seems to be so solid. Only your prejudiced view of a certain situation as inimical makes it so. You should be able to work on it, to reverse the whole process. The wise man inwardly sees the oneness, and that very cognition changes the external world for him. The problem arises when a person has to share the same with another person. Even if I see only the Absolute right here and now, and I am delighted, you may look at me and see only a pot-belly and a beard. So I also have to carry you with me. I have to somehow help you change your view, so that even though you are seeing the pot-belly and beard, you know those are only formal things which are impressed upon you by your senses and shaped by your ideas. The differences in the ideas are not in the substance of consciousness, out of which the ideas are formulated. Give primacy to the substance of consciousness. It is ever there. Treat the modulations of it as a passing show. That will make it more comfortable. The purport of this verse is not to take you away from the pragmatic utility or the transactional richness of life. It merely adds another dimension to them, the dimension of the Absolute, and in so doing they become infinitely more valuable. An important word used here is panditan. We are familiar with panditry, a kind of bookish knowledge, but this is not the same as panditam. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of it, advising when you see a wise man, a Brahmin, a knower of the self, or a knower of the Absolute, who is worthy of being adored, who makes himself more worthy by being very humble, That means too much emphasis is being put on his values. Whatever his great qualities, such a person is to be equated with a cow. In Sanskrit literature, the cow is always used as an example of a being with no intelligence. Whenever a person is foolish, it is said he is a cow. But in the Gita, the Brahmin and the cow, as well as an elephant, a dog, and even an eater of dogs, are all to be equated. All of them are seen as one by the person with unity and sameness of vision. It is important to realize that the priest is not being reduced to the level of a dog eater, however, but rather that you are seeing their underlying unity, that they have the same status as manifestations of the Absolute. What is recommended to us here is this unifying vision. You cannot have a unifying vision in spiritual absorption because you don't have to. In deep sleep, you are not asked to do it because you cannot. In the dream also, you are essentially helpless. But in this wakeful state alone, it is possible to become critical, thoroughgoing, penetrative, meditative, reflective, and perceptive of this possibility of seeing the Absolute in the relative. And the free translation of verse 63 is as follows: The wise know there is only knowledge, so they remain one with it and don't struggle. For them the truth to be known is here and now. But only a few see the secret. Those who do not know this think of it as an unknown entity to be sought and discovered, and under this delusion they struggle and agonize.